Hello, everybody, and welcome to another brand new episode. So, in today's episode, as you can probably tell from the title, I really just want to reflect and talk a little bit about motivations and just specifically my personal story and reasons to why I really became an entrepreneur back several years ago and became a small business owner to start a lot of my own personal business ventures. Now, I will start by saying on the spot while everyone is still here is that the motivation behind starting my own business and becoming a small business owner is that it was never about the money. I think this is something that's really, really important to portray. And the reason why I say this is that because if you are someone that watches a lot of entrepreneurial related videos, so entrepreneurship, how to make money online, all of those businesses, you will see so many videos that talk about things such as like how I made $1 million on Shopify, how I made ... doing this business and all sorts of things. When the reality is that the majority of people that pursue those businesses either never made $1 million, so they either just completely lied, or they did make $1 million in sales. So it's a little bit misleading, is that they sold $1 million worth of products, but when you actually factor in the cost and the expense that it takes to run such a business, their actual take home is in many cases just about 10 to 20% of whatever number they physically report. But the bottom line is that if you are looking for a, like how I got $1 million success story about, how I made tons and tons of money and why you should become an entrepreneur for wealth related reasons, then the reality is that most business owners are just your local mom and pop shops, people that run things like laundromats, restaurants, businesses, freelancers, self-employment. A lot of these people, they're not people that made millions and millions of dollars off their business. But on a flip note is that there are a lot of benefits that can potentially come if you do decide to follow the path of becoming an entrepreneur or small business owner, which is what we're going to explore in today's video. So if you're looking for a video that talks about money, there are so many other channels out there and other videos. But if you are looking for a very realistic video talking about entrepreneurship, small business owners, motivations, the reasons why you should maybe consider pursuing one, the reasons why I personally pursued them, then welcome aboard because you are in the right video. So with that being said, let's just get right to this video. But as always, if you guys enjoy videos like this, like, comment, subscribe. If you guys want to, you guys don't have to, but it is always greatly appreciated. And let's get started. So the first reason and big motivation why I personally became an entrepreneur and why you might potentially be interested in becoming an entrepreneur / small business owner is actually not something related to me per se, but is actually something related to something that was totally out of my control. And it's something that's actually more true than ever today. And it has to do with the economy. So the reality is that there were a lot of people I know that were forced into becoming an entrepreneur, not necessarily because they wanted to be an entrepreneur, but because the job market was so bad at the time period, and it's even worse today, that because of that particular reason, what happens is that they found it so difficult to find employment because of how bad the job market was, that they ended up having to venture off to do it on their own. They ended up having to venture off to start up their own projects, their own business ventures, their own ways of making money and sources of income because they were not able to find employment. And I kind of relate to this story is that because what happened was that at the time period when I had started my very first business venture, I was actually just a little bit fresh out of college. So not more than 2 years out of college. And what really ended up happening is that there was a period of my life where I was struggling to find employment. So I felt that because I was struggling to find employment, if there was nobody that was going to take a chance on me, I had to potentially try to go off and start my own project and try to take a chance on myself. But even when I actually did physically find employment and was finally being able to be employed and working and all that stuff, I also found it a situation where although I was employed, it was a very difficult time to be able to try to build up vertically, especially today because if so many different people are losing their jobs, getting laid off left and right. If you've been following this channel, we have made so many unemployment videos talking about how rough the job market is. And some of it actually comes from my personal experience because again, I don't do YouTube full time. YouTube is really just a side hustle for me. Then you've probably known about a lot of the videos where I talk about how I personally pursued and tried to find jobs and struggled very hard with it. So because of that particular reason, entrepreneurship is potentially a way to keep yourself busy and potentially potentially give yourself an opportunity to start something fresh when nobody else is going to give you that opportunity in a traditional workforce. So I think that the idea really behind this one is that if you are someone that's currently either struggling to find work, or you are currently working like I was back in the day, but you're struggling to build up in your career, then maybe entrepreneurship is something to consider. Because entrepreneurship, what's really amazing about it is that it's the potential opportunity that allows you to essentially go out and carve your own path, to start up your own project, to see if you can build up your own team, your own project, your own lifestyle, the things that you really, really want to do. And I think that that's one big motivation to maybe becoming an entrepreneur, which is not because of something that you necessarily want to, but because a lot of people were forced into it because of the economy and everything that was going on. So that's really the first thing that I really, really want to talk about, that I think it's important. But the second thing that I think is really motivating for why I really became an entrepreneur, and why I think maybe you can consider becoming an entrepreneur as well, going back and notice again, money is not one of the motivations, but one of the motivations that has to do with the freedom. So this one is really, really important because at the time period when I was working my corporate job, so if you don't know my background story, most of you guys have known it, but if you're brand new here, welcome, consider subscribing. The idea really is that my background story is that I used to work as a corporate engineer in the construction industry. I left that industry after pursuing it for several years in order to go into the media production world, which is where I currently work in television and film. But on the side of that, I built up a lot of different business projects, such as like doing stuff in e-commerce, sales, building up a blog, this YouTube channel, a lot of other side hustles, freelancing, different positions, different projects, and all sorts of different things. So I've kind of bounced around a lot over the years. But going back to the freedom is that one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that back when I was working my corporate job, although it was actually easier to make money at my corporate job, because as long as the business, as long as the company that I worked for did reasonably well and I was a reasonably okay worker, I was able to basically generate stable income consistently, just coming into work, doing the absolute bare minimum and collecting a paycheck and going home. The problem is that when you work a traditional corporate job, it can feel a little bit restricting. You have a boss, you're under the mercy of someone, you cannot control your time, you are stuck there following orders. There is someone out there that will control your hours, control how much money you make, it just feels very, very restricting. I don't know if you can relate to that or not. If you can relate to it, or if you don't relate to it, feel free to leave a comment, because I'd love to hear your personal experiences about this. But the idea is that for me, at least, when I was working in corporate America, it can feel very, very restricting, always having to follow orders, following rules, even if sometimes the rules don't even necessarily make sense. You just have to follow them for the sake of following them because you're an employee at the end of the day. But one of the biggest things that I think, the biggest benefit that I think being an entrepreneur / small business has really afforded me, is that it's given me a lot of freedom to finally be able to chase out and do the things that I actually really want to be able to do, and how I decide to live my life and spend my time. So what I mean by that is that at the time period, although I was making actually more money, which is again going back why this was never about the money, although I was making more money at my corporate job, and certainly making it on a more secure way, because again, I just have to collect a paycheck every single month, every single week by week. The idea is I never really had time for a lot of things outside of work. So by deciding to become an entrepreneur and a small business owner, it gave me so much more freedom now to decide when I want to wake up, when I want to go to sleep, what I want to be working on, where I want to be working, when I want to be working, how I want to be working, how I want to do things. As long as the bills are paid, as long as the clients are happy, as long as the customers are, happy, then all that really matters from there is just doing things how you want it to be done. And I think that that's really a big beneficial thing, is that it's not just about the freedom when you actually do your work, but it's also about the freedom in terms of your lifestyle. Being able to take that vacation when you want to, being able to take off when you're sick, feeling like you want to take off because of a health related issue. Maybe you want to spend time working on yourself, building new skills, going to a family event, going to a social event, traveling, experiences, chasing fun experiences. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, one of the biggest benefits that I've really found through entrepreneurship basically comes down to the freedom of being able to choose how you spend your time, where you want to spend it, how you want to spend it, and when you want to spend it. And I think that that's really the big thing that motivated me to become an entrepreneur, that kept me going. Now, the next thing that we really have to talk about is really about another big motivation and reason why I decided to really follow the path of an entrepreneur is really because of the growth and the opportunities and the things that you can learn on the way there. And there was a very famous quote. I don't think it's a famous quote. It might have just been something a mentor told me at a bar or something like that when I was just, I don't know, going on a night out on a Friday night. But I remember that there was someone once that told me the quote, and one of his advice when it came to becoming an entrepreneur is that you should decide to become an entrepreneur if you really want to, not because of the amount of money you can make, but more because of the person and ways that you can grow and the knowledge and skills that you can develop in the process of becoming an entrepreneur and on the journey to get there than the actual destination itself. In other words, what it really stood out to me and what it really meant was that the things and the skills that you can learn, that is something that no amount of money will be able to buy in the future. Your experiences, all these things, you can always make money at a lot of different stages at life, but no amount of money is going to be able to buy time, is going to be able to buy age, especially if you are watching this as a younger individual who maybe is in your 20s by any chance. If you're watching this as a younger individual, no amount of money is going to be able to buy your youth, your age, your time, and in most cases knowledge, because I know that there's people that's going to be able to say like, yes, I can buy classes, right? I can buy a master class or a course or something like that. But the idea is at the very end of the day, experience, life experience, these are things that within means no amount of money is going to be able to buy. And if you decide to become an entrepreneur, I think the growth is going to be very fulfilling, which is probably a great maybe transition to talk about the next thing I want to talk about, which is the reason why I personally became an entrepreneur, which really just has to do with emotion. And it's specifically because of fulfillment, personal life fulfillment. There are a lot of people that work traditional jobs, but that although they might even be making a lot of money at their traditional job, the problem is that some people are working jobs that they might be making a lot of money, but they feel like every single day is just so similar to each other. They don't feel a sense of purpose. They don't feel a sense of fulfilling. They just feel like every single day they're just waking up, going to work, coming home, eat, sleep, repeat, right? And again, feel free to share stories if you do or don't relate to this, because it's always great to hear from you guys. But a lot of people, I feel, in our world live on kind of like an autopilot mentality where they feel that life, there's nothing more to life than just eat, work, eat, sleep. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Hopefully married by 30, and there's nothing else more to it than that. But if you are trying to chase out an emotion, a sense of fulfillment, something that will hopefully make you happy, a sense of purpose, I think a lot of times what's beautiful about entrepreneurship is that it gives you the chance to be able to cater and start up your own project and business, but to hopefully try to center that business around something that you actually really care about. So for example, for me, one of the businesses that I started was to go into freelance entertainment, to start up my own production company and production projects so that I can potentially go out there to have my own voice to tell stories. A lot of the fulfillment from like the people met, the social scene, the crowd, the fulfillment I've got from seeing my own project to actually being able to work directly with clients, to customers, people, and trying to really be able to make an impact on their lives. That is something I feel that no amount of money can potentially buy, that I think is very fulfilling and maybe a potential motivation to become an entrepreneur / a small business owner, if that is something of interest that I think a lot of people will hopefully find very fulfilling to pursue. And then the last motivation and I guess reason to become an entrepreneur, this one is not the reason I became an entrepreneur, but it is something that I think I'll mention just because I know some people might be interested in hearing me talk about this. But at the end of the day, it is actually going to be about the money. Now again, going back is that for me, becoming an entrepreneur and small business owner was never about the money at all. Money was it wasn't even secondary. It was more like fourth dairy or third dairy or fourth dairy or fifth dairy or something like that. But it was definitely not the top 3 reasons, any of the top reasons, if anything, why I became an entrepreneur. But if you are someone that is interested in building a lot of wealth someday, then I will say is that by becoming an entrepreneur, the opportunity is there. For me, I think being able to just have food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, have shelter over my head, being able to spend time with the people I care about, friends, chasing experiences, being able to travel, have reasonable work-life balance, a sense of fulfillment, all of these things were basically enough for me to feel happy enough to enjoy my career. As long as all of these things could get taken care of, that was what I would have defined as like a very, very successful, good, happy career. But I know for people that are really interested in money, that's actually completely okay, because at the end of the day, money is very important. You know, we need money to live. If you are trying to live extravagantly, you need money to live extravagantly. If you want to, pursue certain experiences, there are many experiences that do require a lot of money. But I will say this is that while money is not the motivation why I personally became an entrepreneur, if it is something that maybe drives you, then it is something that you can potentially look into. With that being said, before I sign off on this video, I will say is that I think that if you are after the money, although the potential is there to make a lot in entrepreneurship, I actually think that the probability, the fact that most businesses don't end up thriving to the scale that most people think they will thrive, that you're actually more likely to make more money just pursuing a corporate job, especially if you actually build up in the corporate ladder. This one is of course a little bit subjective, so it might, be something I need to talk about in like another future video. So if that is something of interest, maybe I'll talk about it in a future video. But as always, that's pretty much what I really just wanted to cover in today's video. Really talking about my motivation, my story, my reasoning to becoming an entrepreneur. If you guys enjoyed that, hopefully you guys did or found that insightful, maybe consider liking, commenting, any thoughts, suggestions, comments about anything, subscribing, hitting the bell, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.